And the hike, I mean, that's probably part of the many hobbies, whether it's true or not. In my mind, you are very much like jack of all trades kind of guy. So
master of none now.
Yeah, well, that's what I tell my students. They're like, oh, you know all this stuff. I'm like, I know all kinds of stuff. I'm just not. I'm good at a lot of things. I'm great at nothing. Getting back to the library, and whether you think about that original position, or maybe more importantly, I guess what you do now. How much of your college education or high school education are you technically using? I mean, like, it's one of those things where you probably don't get the job without a degree.
Yeah.
How much of the degree are you using? Like, could you have learned most of this elsewhere just by being in the library? Or
I would say that 90+% of what I do in my job currently is strictly experience based.
Like you learned.
I learned it by seeing, by doing, by hearing, by talking and conversing with other librarians. I mean, when you grow up and work around librarians most of your life, you pick up on trends and whatnot, and you kind of your ears to the ground of the world of the library, and you hear what's going on, and you find things that I had no idea that somebody's job is to coordinate summer reading. It doesn't tick.
You see it happening, but you don't always think somebody had to do that, and
you don't think I mean this year, for example, summer reading starts early, the day after school gets out, June 11th, and I started planning in October.
Wow,
it takes a lot of time to get this thing going, and it's really a big part of my job. There's 10 million little pieces that all need to fall into place by the day one, and then 8 weeks later it's over, and it's like, all right, let's do it again. And
so that's like a lot of the soft skill sort of pieces that we think about, time management, being organized, working, being able to stick with the goal over a period of time, and those are things that really it's I don't know, it's weird because I feel like you're rarely taught that in school.
Yeah, those are passive lessons.
But school's a good place to learn them, even though no one's necessarily teaching it. And most, regardless of what you do in college, there's at least some research. So there's some of that, but you really, in your case, you had so much experience already that.
Yeah, and again, I would say the college and high school lessons that I learned that I now apply are very much like my thinking strategies on how to approach and tackle problems. Again, that GIS class really taught me to look at big picture things, look at multiple layers and how they interact with things. Don't get on this narrow track mind of this is how I think it should be done, when you're not thinking about how this action is going to affect this set of people or this set of people. I mean, there's, and the individual, not let alone the age groups. I mean, there's a lot of different overlapping pieces to my work that I need to consider, and I think that's kind of the big stuff I pulled out of college and high school.
So sort of I hate the phrase learning how to learn or learning how to think, but that is some of what's happening.
I would say that's a big part of it.
Probably not using a lot of your chemistry class. I use none of mine.
I do that when I'm balancing my soil and my plants and stuff, things like that. So it's but again, that's stuff that I have since subscribed to the University of YouTube for, where it's how do I keep my African violet from dying? It's just watch a bunch of videos.
But, that's in the first two podcasts I recorded, I talked to former students from Heritage about your age, Eric Hernandez and Esther Kim. And they both, after those two, and I don't know how many podcasts it's come up on, I've mentioned a couple of times, I find myself referencing this a lot at work. I just call it Google U. What school do you go to? Google University. And the more I talk to people, there's so much, and I mean, it makes sense. You got plants, I've got a bunch of house plants, I got garden. No one ever taught me how to do any of this. So when I don't know, I either roll the dice and do the same, I've got a big enough garden, I can do the same thing 3 different ways and see which one doesn't die. Or if I don't have the patience for this sort of thing, I just look it up online, How much has that changed the library or what you would do in it? I mean, people make the argument, what do you even need a library for? You got the internet. I'm in libraries all the time for either tutoring or trying to take my kids and stuff. there are plenty of people in the library, right? So I don't look around and think, oh, libraries are dying. At least not where
here.
We live.
We're busier than ever. Like, I mean, it's year after year, our stats are going up, and
yeah, I just saw something. I forget who posted the article or like what newspaper it was. They said
more people going to libraries than sports and music and all that stuff combined.
More people visited a library last year than went to a movie theater or something, and I felt like, holy crap. And then I thought, I didn't go to the movie theater, but I was to the library probably a couple hundred times.
I would even think, like, if you went, like, to 3 or 4 movies and a concert or a sports thing or whatever, it's like, if you went to the library every week, that's 52 times in a year. Like, that's just a lot more than you're going to.
It's a lot more. How do you see that changing? Like, how's the library different now than when you were a kid?
So it's, I kind of see the library as like the community hub. I mean, it very much is like there's something for everybody. Right. Everybody's accepted there. For the most part, it's all free. I mean, other than a couple of supplies and things and, passport services, those cost money, but that's because it's passports and, But, I mean, generally, like, you can walk into a library the second it opens and stay there all day long, and you can do whatever, to an extent, what you want to do. Within reason, you're not disturbing others and whatnot and causing a scene, but, I mean, you're not expected to check out a book, but you can. Right. You're not expected to use the computer, but you can if you want to. It's just like, this is just like, the term like safe space. Like, I mean, it really is just like, just come and be what you need to be, and don't impede on others, but do what you got to do. And I really see libraries kind of. I mean, my job specifically relates to programming, so I do oversee and plan and bring a lot of programs, and programs are, it's a very vague term. It's like, what's a program? It's like, well, it's like sometimes it's a drum circle. Sometimes it's a paint night where we have some artists coming in and teaching teens how to paint, or sometimes it's we had this one speaker come and talk about his battles with addiction and how he overcame them, and it's just like, I mean, it's kind of like a real world YouTube session in a sense. I mean, you can kind of we've got a little bit of everything for everybody. We try to appeal to all audiences. We try to be as inclusive as possible, or try to include every aspect of human life. I mean, right?
It's funny. It was good timing. I had done, I don't know, an SAT or college admissions essay presentation at one of the libraries. And while I was there, and you probably know this, I'm sure, way better than I do, but even within one county, and how many, was it 7 branches?
We have nine traditional library branches, and then the law library is included in that as well. Okay. So we have 10 libraries in our system. The law library is a little bit set up a little bit differently than what you would think a normal traditional branch is. Right. But yeah,
But each one like has its own like sort of different feel, and there's like different clientele, and and so I was at one of the libraries, and I thought, like, walking in, I'm seeing people doing work, people are like running a business from this table. There's a guy who appears to be sleeping, but that also looks like a guy who probably needs a decent place to go sit and sleep for a little. And I thought, like, but you're like, nobody's bothering anybody. Like, this is great. And then I think it was the next day I read this article about the loss of common space. Like, we're sort of working everything out into private ownership, and maybe even especially in an area like this where we're in this sort of like booming suburb, generally high income area, and there are parks, but even around here, they're even like privately owned parks. Yeah. So you might go in, but you're going to end up paying for this stuff. There aren't as many like free public places as there used to be, and so the library is sort of this like common space. We don't get that enough. Now, I mean, like, you buy tickets to a sporting event, and the price variance between the different sets are so big that you don't, like, 50 years ago you could go to a game and rich guy sat next to a poor guy because everybody just got the same tickets. And now I feel like there's so few places where people bump into each other in those ways.
Commingling.
You go to the grocery store by your neighborhood, so if I live in a richer neighborhood, I never see you kind of deal. Yeah. And so, like, high school is a place where, obviously there's some people private school, homeschool, but high school's one of these places where you really see like all of society, or at least all of one age.
Yeah, you get a good snapshot.
The library is another, and that's probably even better because you do get all age groups. You know, I got 14 to 18 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a dynamic thing. I don't know the answer to this. Are our libraries in this area indicative of how are libraries elsewhere doing well? Is that
like the overall health of
I mean, like, you know, if you had to say, like,
yeah.
is the number of libraries increasing or decreasing? Or, like, are people using their libraries in more rural areas or inner city areas the way you're seeing a boom in business around here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and I don't, you know, pay attention to those kind of stats closely, but again, it comes passively just from
it's like a
being
feel
around.
of it, though, yeah.
I would say, I mean, if anything, just last year, we built a 40,000 square foot library. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's a huge building. And it's state of the art. It's got all sorts of fancy doodads and whatnot in there, and it's beautiful. And it's just like, I mean, if anything, we are doing nothing but expanding, or renovating or growing, expanding services. I've worked for a different system.'re in the same boat. Like I mean, granted, it's the neighboring county, but it's like they're renovating, they're building. I don't pay too close attention to, you know, like, you know, small town, you know, middle of nowhere kind of libraries.
Right.
But generally, I mean, I would think in today's day and age, with just how much everything costs in general, libraries are still seen as this nice, like, again, it's like it's a free, safe spot to just, you know, you're not pressured to buy your way into it. It's like you can just be there. And I would say that, you know, from my perspective, and again, I live in this kind of library bubble, libraries are doing pretty well. Yeah,
you know, if school was not required, I think people would feel better about it. The fact that we force people to go, like, a lot of people don't like it. It's because you had to be there. Yeah. If you didn't have to go and you checked out your options, I think a lot of people would go anyway.
Yeah,
just because they would.
Yeah.
Oh, as it turns out, a lot of this other stuff also sucks, and maybe you know, and so you know, I think they would go better. But I think a lot of people don't have enough positive contact with, like, government services unless you're in dire need. Yeah. And so, you know, the most common places you interact with your government are through a police officer, and that's usually because there was a problem, right? Paying your taxes, which no one really feels good about doing. And then the library. Yeah. And so of all the ways you can come in contact with where your tax dollars are going, that's probably one of the best ways to do it. You know, you know, I don't know. And anybody who's feeling disgruntled about their government services, go to your library. No, really. Go see people benefiting and somebody helping you out.
And then when you look at the numbers of, like, how much of your taxes are actually going to the library, you're like, wait, I'm getting all this for this?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, your return on investment on the library is phenomenal.
Is massive.
I mean, it does. It can and it does, and I see it. It changes people's lives. I mean, I had this, again, bringing up that talk on addiction. I kind of got burnt on attendance, for one. You know, I try not to, like, look at attendance too much, but it's like when a program I put on and nobody shows up, it's kind of like, well, like, how can I fix that?
Right.
I had one person show up to this program, which was it was a pretty big program. Just one attendee for it. And, you know, we're hoping for like 30, 40 around that. We had one. That one person spent about an hour plus with that presenter, just one-on-one. And when you're going to a talk about addiction, recovery, and moving forward, things like that, I can't imagine what that conversation was like.
Right.
And I believe that conversation hopefully made a pretty positive impact on that individual's life and, you know, helped them moving forward. And that's one of those, like, events that, you know, just makes me, like, not care about the stats so much.
Right.
I mean, you know, there's, you know, you gotta make sure you're spending wisely. You know, I am spending taxpayers' dollars doing these things. I can't just be going all frivolous and doing what sounds cool, but it's like, I do want to try to make an impact on things. And I use that example often where it's like, you know, just because one person showed up, you don't, you know, that one person's life could have been changed because of this program.
The impact on the one might have been better. I mean, I've seen it when I do say like the college admissions presentation in particular, I don't even remember if I've told you this, but I've been amazed at how many people show up and they're kids who are in 8th and 9th grade who are like very motivated and they're trying to think ahead and their parents are there with them, and so now that I've done a few of them, I know to ask, all right, hand up if you're in this grade, hand up if you're, because if I really, there was one, I don't remember, it might have been at Brambleton, I don't know, at one of the libraries, there were a handful of people in the room, it was okay turnout. Not a single person, not a single one of the students was actually ready to write an admissions essay. The only person who was in the situation was a mom whose kid didn't want to come. And she's like, I don't think he's doing it right, but I don't know. And we got through and she's like, I wish I'd known all this before. I would have known whatever. And I ended up working with the kid privately afterwards. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, hey, cool. I help everybody out and I picked up a tutoring gig, so that's fine. But when it's the small group, and I did one in the library where it was a small group, I think there were only 3 or 4 families. And they were all in 9th or 10th grade. Yep. So I did like the quick click through some slides, and then I just sat down and we talked. Yep. They probably got better support and better advice than if there had been 40 people in the room and I have to stand up and do the whole thing formally. So it's like, okay, you're all younger. Here's the parts you need. Here's whatever else. And I walked out of there thinking, and the librarian there who had helped set up, and she was great. And she was so nice. She's like, I'm sorry more people didn't show up. And I was like, nah, like it was.
No, it's good.
I'd actually I feel like I did more good there than I would have if more people were in the room, just because you have the chance to answer those questions. Yes. And again, not that the numbers aren't important at all, but maybe the number of people in the room isn't always a fair indication of the quality of the thing.
The attendance is not indicative of the impact of the program. And it's impossible to say exactly how much this program impacted this individual. Yeah. And again, like you said, if it was a group of 40 people, who knows if it would have made the same impact. Yeah. So I get asked about stats and asked about things like that often enough that I'm just like, we had this many, but
it's yeah. I mean, I do this all the time talking about it because I teach 11th grade, so all the state English tests fall in my class, and numbers are important. And I tell the kids, I'm like, look, we do things a little differently than sometimes in other classes, and I get away with that because we have good numbers. So I need you to not blow this. I need good numbers so that next year's class doesn't get stuck with the stuff you didn't get stuck with.
Don't screw this up for me.
Yeah, well, and don't screw it up for the kids next year. I tell but I also try to remind them or anyone else who wants to talk about it that the quantitative effect of that test or the attendance is not always a fair representation of the qualitative, the quality of what we've done and whatever else. Yeah. So all right, so you've been in your job a year and a half?
Closer. Let me think. I started June 28th, 2018. So I'm coming up on a year and
almost
7 months.
Almost 2.
6 months, yeah.
And you can tell me you don't want to answer this. Fine. I don't. Present company excluded, because obviously my programs are incredible.
Yeah.
Probably not in the big picture, but that's. Do you have a favorite one, or is it
program?
Yeah, like a thing that happened, whether there were 2 people or 200, whatever. Just a thing where you're like, that was awesome. And if you don't want to call out favorites, I understand. You can say no, and that's okay. But I'm sure you've done and seen enough of them.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some ones that stand out. We had Eric Litwin at the library recently, and Eric Litwin is the original author of the first 4 Pete the Cat books.
Okay.
Pete the Cat is a rock star. Yeah. He is, you talk to anybody under the age of 7, I guarantee you they know who Pete the Cat is. He's cool, he's groovy.
I didn't know who Pete the Cat was until public speaking. A kid did a dramatic reading of a Pete the Cat book last year. I was like, that's cool. And I took my kid to the library, and he walked out with 6 of those books. Yeah, so the original author, the creator of...
Yeah. So he's the original author. James Dean was the creator of Pete the Cat, the character.
But so he did the books.
Yeah, he did the books. They got together. They created at least the first 4 Pete the Cat books, and then have gone off to do other things. I think James Dean is still creating Pete the Cat books at this point, but Eric Litwin has moved on to other things like Groovy Joe. Groovy Joe's super cool as well. He's a groovy dog, dude. He plays the guitar, he sings and dances, and the Nuts family. There's all sorts of great things. But Eric Litwin was at a Brambleton a couple of months ago in December, and I've never seen somebody captivate a completely packed room. I mean, standing room only for a children's program in a massive room. I mean, the Brambleton Storytime Room is like fairly large as far as a storytime room goes.
Right.
Having everybody with their metal horns, their hands, and just rocking out, going, my buttons, my 4 groovy buttons. And it was just like, this guy has like cast a spell on every single person in this room, and they are all under his control. And it was just like, this guy gets it. Like, I want to bring him back.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was just super cool. And there's been tons of things over the years. I mean, we had this guy come out from Virginia Beach to teach a drum circle. Like, people's like, hippie drum circles. Like, what is that? And it's this question. You see drum circle? Like, what is? We brought it to the After Hours Teen Center, and I mean, this is a thing that we do every single Friday night. Get 100 plus middle to high schoolers at the Cascades Library every single Friday night from 7 p.m. on, and he did his drum circle there, and it was just like seeing a bunch of like middle and high schoolers like go completely bonkers on these drums.
Yeah.
And then he would just come in and would just like, I don't know how, it's really cool to see these guys perform,
right.
Like obviously in their element. I mean, this is what we're hiring them to do.
Yeah.
So I hope they can do it well.
Yeah.
But then to see it, I'm just like, wow, all right, that's super cool. And then just to hear the conversations, I think that's one of those like subtle things that you don't really think about is when I work at programs, I hear the conversations afterwards as I'm cleaning, because I'm just there helping clean up, packing things away, trying to get the room ready for whatever's coming up next. But you hear all this conversation that's going on, and you hear like how that program has affected that individual, and you hear all these like just like great little bits of feedback, and kind of you play that fly on the wall where I'm like, I'm working, I'm cleaning up and stuff, but most people don't realize. So that's the other funny thing is because I'm 28. I'm in a relatively high-level position in the library. Nobody expects that I'm the one that they're looking for when they're coming into a library. I'm like, here, my name's Sam, and meet me here, and they walk past me, all the time, and they're just like, I'm just like, I know that's you. Like, I know you're the person I'm looking for, and you've just walked past me, and then it's funny. I've seen it several times where they'll go up to the front desk, and they'll be like, oh, I'm here to meet Sam. And it's like, oh, he's right there. And I'm just like walking up to them, like, oh, hey, I'm right here. It's like, oh, I thought you were much older than you are. And
do you think it's the hair?
I don't know. I think this is the combination.